Good morning, everyone. I'm David Richardson, and it's my pleasure to serve as the Executive Director of your Lumber River Council of Governments. And we're so delighted to have Jason King with the County Association joining us today. As you know, both the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners and the COG Association, along with the League of Municipalities, has got some funding to help support our member governments with your needs when it comes to ARPA. And Jason and I have talked some and how the Lumber River COG can work with the county association. And we thought a good starting point would be to do kind of an introductory, kind of where ARPA is with you today, answer some questions and answers, talk about what the association and the COGs are able to do for you. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jason and let him welcome and introduce himself. And then if you're okay, I'd like to go around so we know who all we've got here.
Sure, yeah. Thank you, appreciate it, David. We're happy to be here. Would say from the association's perspective, we're really excited to partner with Lumber River Council and other councils across the state, not just on presentations like this, but also working with your county, your councils on just providing guidance and resources around ARPA and opioid settlement funds moving forward. I'm Jason King. I'm a native of Randolph County, live in Wake County now, and I've served in multiple roles with the association over the past 18 years. And if I could, I may go ahead and just kind of kick off introductions for folks in, and we've got a few folks with the association on the line here, and maybe I will start briefly, just go to Leslie, and Leslie, if you could go to Neil, and then Neil, if you could transition to Don and Andrea.
Sure, thanks, Jason. Hi, I'm Leslie Mazing. I'm the owner and CEO of Strategics Consulting. I have been working in the public sector of federal advocacy for 30 years. I'm a federal relations consultant for the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, and actually also a federal advisor for the North Carolina Association of Regional Councils of Government on the statewide level. So all things federal, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Neil Emery. I'm an outreach associate with the County Commissioners Association. I represent and cover the 51 eastern counties, so know the counties from that perspective, and then formerly served as a retired county manager. And working with Jason as we work to see how we can help in this area. So, Don.
I am Dillon Reeves. I'm one of the new strategic project coordinators. I'll be working closely with Jason and Neil to kind of start implementing and facilitating some of the projects with using the ARPA funds. So just excited to get started.
Hi, everybody. Andrea Setterby, also with Strategic Management Services over at NCACC, and we'll be joining Don as a strategic project coordinator. So great to meet everybody.
All right, thanks Team County at NCACC. David, if you want to walk us through the rest of the introductions, that'd be great.
I will. Thank you, Jason. And I'm going to go ahead and the other COG stuff that are on. Sonia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, Sonia. John.
I think we may have some feedback going on. Sonia Johnson.
Yeah, I'm here. Sonia Johnson. I'm a clerk to the board for the COG, and I'm going to be helping with the ARP for our counties.
And then John.
Hi, I'm John Bourgeois. I'm the regional planner at the COG, and I'm also helping with ARPA with the COG.
Then we've got Kevin Patterson who's on. Kevin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Kevin Patterson. I'm the county manager in Scotland County.
And then we've got Lisa Locklear. That may be Carla Kinlaw. It is shown up both ways. Carla or Lisa, can you hear us? I believe Lisa may be with the finance office for Robeson County. I know Carla's the finance director for Robeson County. And we may have some others that will join us later, but I want to say thank you again so much for everybody for joining us this morning. And at this time, I think we'll turn it over to Leslie and let Leslie talk about what she knows at the federal level. We do want to make it informal, so if you've got questions, please feel free to stop and ask as we go.
Okay, and I think you're going to have to allow me to share my screen.
Sonia, can you take care of that?
Give me 1 second. Okay, Leslie, you're now the host of this meeting.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. All right, let me get to. All right, and we need to view. Oh, sorry, bear with me. Okay, can everybody
It's all a
see
work
that?
in progress, right? Yeah.
I know, right? I mean, well, and I'll admit, I am not the most technology savvy type of person. I do pretty well, but inevitably I hit the wrong button or something. But can everybody see this all right?
We can.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, Jason. So again, my name is Leslie Mazingo, Strategics Consulting, and what I wanted to do today was kind of give you a really high level. I'm not really sure, and I don't know if maybe you can throw it into chat, an explanation of sort of where you are in your American Rescue Plan dollar process in terms of spending your funds and knowledge of the plan overall and what's allowed. So I will say, you know, as I'm talking, if you don't mind putting in sort of a, you know, a one, we know everything, we've got a, you know, we've got a plan, we know what we're doing and we know a lot about it. Two, we know a little bit, but we haven't gotten that very far. Three being, we don't know anything, we really haven't gotten started at all. We're kind of at the basic level, and that'll kind of help me adjust as I go through the slides, because I certainly don't want to cover a lot of things that folks already know. And Jason, I'll ask you, because like I said, if I start to switch between screens and chats, you know, inevitably I'm going to mess something up. So just let me know if you get some responses there that kind of help me guide where we are. But mostly today we want to talk about the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. And I'll probably just call them, you know, recovery funds or fiscal recovery funds as we go through it. But, you know, there's the, you know, the acronyms that we'll be using going forward. Basically, an enormous amount of money that is coming in, you know, to cities and counties, you know, and states, you know, nationwide, you know, for COVID response and rebuilding, really. And I would say at this point, a lot more of it is into the, you know, past the recovery or into the recovery, but really getting into the rebuilding stage. So one of the things I wanted to share with you here is a timeline to kind of give you a sense, you know, where we've been and where we are, where we're going. So Congress enacted the American Rescue Plan back in March, little over a year ago, March of 2021. They went through a few months of preparing their interim final rule, and that interim final rule really stayed in place quite a while as they gathered questions and public comments. And they ended up getting well over 1,500 public comments on the interim final rule and worked through all of those questions in the meantime, frequently asked question pages and so forth, up until when they issued the final rule, January 6th of 2022. So here just recently. one of the things that I'm going to touch on this again towards the end that I want to remind everybody is and this chart is from the NCACC. It's on their website, but I encourage you all to keep this timeline in mind, because it's important when you're talking with others, like members of Congress, for example, that they understand that this, it's money that's never been at this level ever before. I mean, I've been doing this over 30 years, and even in the 2008 stimulus bill, we had nowhere near this amount of money, and certainly not where everyone had money to work with. So, these things take time, and they need to be, thoughtfully worked through so that the investments are made wisely. You are subject to repayment if you don't meet compliance and reporting and eligibility. So, you want to do things the right way. And we want, we want everybody to be proud of how these dollars are spent, and to see that an investment was made, not only in immediate need, but, in opportunities for the future. The gift that keeps on giving, if you will. So you have, like we said, we've been working under an interim final rule. We now have the final rule that will go into effect April 1st, but you can certainly use the flexibility under the final rule now. In terms of getting your reports in, there has been a series of, those counties with the higher populations over 250,000 residents, and an allocation of more than 10 million total funding, have already had, project reports due in January. And really the other item that everybody is working diligently towards now is the next report that is due April 30th of this year. The project reports for all of those counties with populations below 250,000 and have less than 10 million in recovery funds. So that's a big deal. There's a lot of new information still coming out about how to meet those compliance requirements, and as folks work through, how they're going to spend their dollars. The other two big items that are big milestones that I want to call to your attention is that December 2024, that is your obligation deadline. So you have until 2024 to commit to how you're going to spend the dollars. And then you have 2 additional years, which is really set up primarily for infrastructure purposes, since those tend to take longer. You've got up until 2026 as a deadline to have fully expended your full grant award. So where we are now is that we've already seen the first tranche, which came out and has been finished by 2021. So 50% of everyone's total allocation went out last year. And then the second installment comes this year, no less than 12 months after receiving the first one. So if you get your money of March last year, you could hypothetically expect your money after that date of March this year. However, I will say, with the fact that the budget was running late in Congress and other factors, Treasury has indicated that they're likely to release the next wave of funding, if you will, by May 10th. So folks that haven't seen that, even if they applied early and got their first tranche, haven't seen their second installment yet, not to worry. It's not that it's going anywhere. It's just that there's some things at the federal level, of course, that will slow that down. But the indication is no later than May 10th, Treasury expects to make those next deposits into the account. And to the best of my knowledge, there isn't anything further that needs to be done. You've already registered and done the paperwork you need to do. So if you've received the first tranche, the second tranche should come automatically into those accounts. That's the beauty of this particular fund, is it goes directly from U.S. Treasury to counties, and that and then you do the reporting and compliance to say how you spent the dollars, compared to a federal competitive grant, where you actually do all the application and all the paperwork up front. You go and you get an agreement on what you're going to spend. You go spend the money, and then you apply to get your funding. You draw down your funds from that grant as you submit your paperwork, ahead of time to report. on the requirements. So this is a little bit different because you're getting your money up front, and then on the back end you report, and so everybody's got this in their accounts and can work through the process of spending it. So as I mentioned, the final rule came out in January. Everybody was waiting anxiously. In fact, when people ask you about timeline of spending, you can even blame it on me and say, well, Leslie Mazinga told us not to spend it until we got our final rule, because I advised everybody not to do anything with that, and in large part because we fully anticipated, this has never been done before, as I said, and we fully anticipated that as they got into all of these questions, really good questions that came in, they would realize that they needed to provide some additional flexibility as well. And so a lot of that, they did do in terms of adding that into between the interim rule and the final rule, is putting that additional flexibility in. Some examples of that have to do with investments in broadband and water infrastructure, as well as the workforce, allowing additional flexibility in the health and economic impacts, and also identifying how you can or providing the method for how you identify certain populations that you can presume that were impacted disproportionately by the pandemic. And along with those areas disproportionately impacted, those populations, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do. So when you are in areas like a qualified census tract, you have a far greater amount of flexibility, and sort of almost you can do just about anything, let's just say, within a QCT versus some of the other categories. It also allowed for the expansion of eligible uses under cybersecurity, and that included modernizing both the hardware and software related to cybersecurity needs, which is turning out to be a really big deal now, right? So everybody is talking about the threats coming from Russia, and the need to make sure that we're all keeping a close eye on our public services. So, that I think that was a good additional flexibility added. And then also they added some clarification in many of the areas of the final rule, such as the capital projects, and then what you need to do in terms of written justification for those projects that are greater than 1 million, and then also specified that there's certain economic development projects that are ineligible. So they just clarified a lot of areas from the interim rule to the final rule in terms of what you could do with capital expenditures. But probably the biggest thing, I won't even say probably, I will say the biggest thing that they did in this final rule that we were all really excited about is providing this new standard allowance for revenue loss. So what the final rule says is that you are allowed to pick either a standard deduction. So it's U.S. Treasury, right? It's just like you would do maybe on your taxes, a very, very Treasury-esque type of term. But you have this standard allowance that says up to $10 million. You can treat it as revenue loss and put it into the category of general government services, or you can do a revised formula, which they made a lot. They simplified the formula because everybody talked about how complicated it was. So they simplified the formula to help you determine your revenue loss, and you can choose between the standard allocation up to 10 million or doing your revenue loss calculation and picking which one is higher. I will say that if you are a community of less than 10 million, there really is no reason that you wouldn't want to take your standard allowance. It is very broad in terms of how you can use those funds. There's a lot less paperwork involved, and it will simplify your life. And we're going to go through some exceptions to that, but overall, anything under 10 million, I think, those who have, and this is total allocation. Okay. So your total allocation, it really makes sense to take that standard allowance and to use that flexibility that's been provided. Now, if you are in the process of deciding what you want to do, you can pick a category that basically says don't know yet, you're working on your decision, or anticipate standard allowance, and I think up to a certain point can be changed. But once you have committed to going in the direction of one or the other, you don't get to reevaluate it each year and come back and change it. So kind of once you go down that lane, that's the lane you're in. And then you will go through reporting and compliance accordingly. And again, as I mentioned, the reporting structure is substantially easier under that revenue loss allowance. And I want to specify this too. It does not matter whether in that standard allowance, I want to be very clear about this because I get this question a lot, like, well, we didn't have any revenue loss. And so I want to be very, very clear. It doesn't matter if you take that standard allowance, whether you had loss of revenue or not. You are allowed to take up to 10 million in that revenue loss category, which is the very broad, very general, regardless of whether you had a single dollar of revenue loss or not. Doesn't matter. You can take up to 10 million under that clause. So this is a chart that is used a lot by the School of Government to explain sort of the different categories of allowable expenditures. So as you can see, you have the opportunity to address, your public health or negative economic impacts of COVID. And there's a list of things there that, in terms of what they're looking in terms of public health emergencies and economic harms. Then you have your revenue lost category to replace that lost revenue, and your standard allowance that I just talked about. You have the premium pay. And I will say that in terms of advisement from the School of Government in particular, they are saying, the only thing you may not want to categorize under revenue loss is premium pay. And that's because there's some ongoing structural issues that, and I'm not even going to begin to try to deep dive into that because I've heard School of Government spend an entire hour just on premium pay. So we don't really have time for that today, but I will say that if you're looking at premium pay, that's something that would need a deeper dive in the NCACC and myself and School of Government. There's all kinds of folks out here willing to help you kind of work through that. And then you have the category of infrastructure investments, and that too comes with some sort of additional explanation and paperwork in terms of, like we talked about, capital expenditures. And if you're over a certain amount, the paperwork that has to go along with it. So if you're ever on School of Government calls, you will hear Kara, who is a genius. And we're all very, very blessed to have her walk us through this regularly, but she will refer to green category or orange category, and she'll have this chart up. So this is a really handy chart to have available as you go through and ask your questions. Another area here, that another slide provided by the School of Government that I wanted to share goes back to, I really want to spend a lot of time on revenue replacement because I believe that this area, that you all have a lot of areas under counties under 10 million. So this is going to be probably the area that you're going to go. And for anyone over 10 million, keep in mind that up to that 10 million, you can still take that standard allowance. And then anything above that, then you would use into other categories. So, you can still take the standard allowance even if you're over 10 million. It's just that 10 million is the cap. So again, mentioning that we have a report deadline coming up on April 30th. The thing that's really important about the standard allowance, the 10 million revenue replacement standard allowance, is that it doesn't convert these into general funds. It does provide, in terms of general government services, that flexibility, but they're still considered grant funds. So as a result of them being categorized as grant funds and not general funds, they don't just, suddenly flip a switch and become, completely free money. They are still grant funds, and therefore as a grant award, they are under the uniform guidance compliance requirements. So there's still some paperwork that you have to do. It just means that there's less paperwork, but we want to make sure everybody understands that you still have to do your project and expenditure reports. You still have to categorize them and and follow the rules in that regard. I wanted to put this up. I won't spend a lot of time on it because I really don't want to take up all your time. I want to leave plenty of time for questions as well. And Jason's going to tell you about the great services that the association is offering. But the bottom line is, in terms of the revenue replacement, is that it allows, all of, everything that is considered eligible or allowable expenditures are those things in general government services. So anything that you as a local government under state law authority are able to engage in, then it counts in terms of eligibility under this revenue loss replacement. And there's some examples there that are provided. And the reason that that I also want to emphasize this blue square, if you will, in terms of where it says you have state law authority, you really, really, really want to be careful with that. I have heard several times, I'm a federal person, so I'm learning the state work as we go through this process. But one of the things that has become abundantly clear is that even though the federal government may give you authority to do things and give you the money to do those things, there is a lot of, there is potentially limitation in your state law authority. And then that would preempt you from being able to do the things, even though the federal government says, broadband, you can spend it on broadband, you can do all these things. The state law says, well, wait just a minute, we have some parameters that you have to follow. So you have to go through a process internally of saying what's eligible under the ARP dollars. And then the next step would be, is that allowed in our state law authority? And then from there going into what category you're using and what requirements come with it. So as you see there, we're recommending that folks go with the revenue replacement with the possible exception of premium pay. And in the case of premium pay, then you're probably better off going with the premium pay category and using the compliance within that category. So again, revenue replacement expenditures do have compliance requirements, and they have different requirements depending on what you're doing. So again, without walking through all of this in great detail, we just wanted to provide again, I'm borrowing the charts because they're so good from UNC School of Government to give you some sense of, depending on what you do with those funds within revenue replacement, what some of the compliance requirements might be. Again, here, this is just kind of a cheat sheet to show you, depending on the size of your local government and how much money you received, dictates what kind of reporting you have to do, when those reports are due, and how often you have to do them. So this chart comes from the US Treasury that just outlines those dates and those requirements based on the size of the community and the amount of funding received. What I wanted to really stress today is that there are lots of resources and incredible resources coming out of the Association of County Commissioners. Lacey Pate is doing a phenomenal job in terms of fielding questions and getting answers out. Jason is going to be explaining the great services that they're ramping up in order to be of assistance using those funds that the state so generously awarded to all of these associations to allow them to help you all implement your dollars. I don't know if other states are doing that. I haven't heard of any other states doing that. I think that we in North Carolina are very, very blessed to have that installment of additional assistance. So there's resources that you should definitely take advantage of. Number one, they're in bold. There is an email address that you can write to from the NCACC where you can send any question you want. Lacey and I and others get a copy of that email, and then either one or all of us will work to assist in providing you with an answer and any other details that you need to move forward. There are a wealth of resources also on the state association's website, so I've put a link there for that. And I wanted to let you know that there is an overview if you're just interested in kind of getting a really broad understanding of what the final rule says from a county perspective. NACO, the National Association of Counties, literally yesterday just issued an overview and analysis, and they had an earlier one. They've done a deeper dive and fine-tuned it a bit, and so you've now got a brand new hot off the presses overview of the final rule from NACO. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the School of Government, NCACC participates in that. Lacey and I are on all the calls. Jason's often there as well, and others. And for your municipalities within your counties, encourage them to go, because they do have the North Carolina League of Municipalities participates in this. But it's led by the School of Government. The link stays the same. You've got the passcode there, and they've now broken it up into 2 sessions. So they have local governments that are in that $0 to $10 million range. There's some date and times of the upcoming webinars there. And these are active webinars. These are not just listening sessions. These are ask your questions. They explain it, you put them in the chat and they walk you through the process. And so, and you can hear what others are asking and maybe get some ideas about different ways that these funds can be spent, and different challenges that people are facing and how to address those challenges before you even know that you have a challenge that needs addressing. So they're really helpful in that way. And then, of course, the dates. with the earliest being tomorrow morning at 8:30 for all of those counties and municipalities that received over 10 million in total ARP recovery funds. So again, highly recommend that. I'll go back to this for a moment, showing you again that there is a link that can be used, and then there's the dates and times for each of those sessions. So additional steps recommended. You'll notice here, I do not say that it's UNC SOG slide, and that it is not from the NCACC, because this is the Leslie Mazingo recommendations. And so I want to be clear that these are just things that I recommend that you do, but they are taken from, others like NACO and the State Association, that we're all hoping we can work on these things together. So first and foremost, what I continuously hear, and I also recommend, is that if you find yourself in a gray area, if you're really struggling to sort of force your project to fit into a category, and you're trying to maneuver the project, to make sure it works, and it's really, you feel like it's a real stretch, there really is no need to go back, choose a safe zone. Like I said, these funds are subject to repayment. The last thing you want to do is have your county embarrassed because, you end up being part of some report that says something was done wrong, and even worse, have to repay the dollars. But, there's so much flexibility, in particular in that revenue replacement, that, really supplanting even something that we've always heard from the federal side is a big no-no. That's even something that you can do in terms of putting dollars into something else within your general fund that you would be spending money on, and then freeing those dollars up to go do something that maybe is not ARP eligible. So really, do your best to just pick those areas that are safe. As I mentioned, lots of resources, so do ask for help. There's plenty of people out there that have been studying this stuff for months and months and months. And so, take advantage of that and ask your questions and get help. And, the COGS are here to help. The State Association is here to help. There are people out there that can help get you where you need to be. So don't be shy about reaching out for that assistance. We're asking folks to share their stories. Tell us what you're working on. Tell us about the investments that you're making. We're also sharing those with NACO and making sure that they know about it. And this goes back to the fact that, as long as there's money still sort of available out there, technically available, not obligated, Washington will keep an eye on it and think, oh, here's an opportunity for us to maybe redirect that to something else. And there have been some concerns about the amount of money that has been given out to counties and municipal governments and states in particular. So we want to make sure that we're continuously sharing our positive stories about the investments that are being made, the difference it's going to make for the residents of your county, and make people aware of that. So if you get those to the State Association, we'll make sure they get out to others, and that we're keeping everyone informed. And I'm really encouraging everyone to keep your members of Congress informed. Let them know if you don't know where you're going to spend the money yet, don't worry about that. Tell them what you are doing. Tell them about the process that you're going through. Tell them about the public engagement that you're working on, surveys that you have, or if you have sort of pillars of investment that you're looking at providing, any good news you can share that gives them the talking points to continue to defend this investment. And I'll back up from there and say, start with a thank you, letting them know how much you appreciate this investment and that you're going to spend it wisely and you're going to make them proud, is really important, because these members of Congress are getting lots and lots of phone calls from the press asking about it. And I guarantee you there's going to be those that are going to want those gotcha moments. And we want to make sure that they're well equipped and have the talking points they need about the things going on in their congressional districts and within their state, so that they can talk eloquently about all the wonderful things these dollars are doing. And that's regardless of whether someone supported ARP or not with a vote. You want to treat them all the same, give them credit for, saying thank you for the funds, and then sharing the good news and the process that you're going through, and invite them out to see your projects. Invite them to come locally. If you're making some infrastructure investments, if you're doing other things, that's a really nice, easy tour type of situation, or just invite them to come sit, at the table with your local elected leadership and some of your department leaders to talk through, the investments that you're making. So invite them out, keep them informed, bring them in to see and to help take credit for the investments that you're making in your counties. So with that, I know it's a lot of information, and I can tell you that even getting it down to this short amount of time, we've been doing webinars that are an hour or more long just on ARP dollars, and within those categories, like I said, we've done broadband webinars, we've done premium pay webinars. There's been a whole lot where an hour or more has been spent just on these topic areas, water infrastructure and so forth. But we wanted to give you kind of a high level overview so you could get a better understanding of what's going on. And I will pause there, and I'm happy to answer questions. And where I don't know the answer, we will find it for you. So any questions? So the slides will be available. And again, this is not your first or only, I should say not first, but this is not your only opportunity to ask questions. We welcome you reaching out as you go through these slides. If you see something that needs clarification and better explanation, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Jason, reach out to Lacey, and good luck everybody with moving forward with your ARP dollars, and we look forward to working with you any way we can to help make it better. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jason. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie. You answered all the questions.
Well, I guess so. Either I've overwhelmed people and they don't want to think about it, or I answer all the questions so there's nothing left. But well, again, it's not the only chance for people to ask, so we'll be available.
Yeah, for sure. I was impressed that you were able to compress that much information into that time frame.
Like I said, if you go to any of the School of Government calls, you will see that we spend an entire, Kara spends, I won't say we, I'm usually listening and learning as well, but she spends a good hour, on individual topics alone. This is, again, this is something that's never been done before. There's the final rule is hundreds and hundreds of pages. The frequently asked question is hundreds of pages. I mean, there's a lot of information out there, but hopefully we've given everybody something to think about, and answered a few questions along the way. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Leslie. David, do you need to hop in with anything, or do you want me to simply transition into you?
I think, Jason, if you want to transition into talking about what y'all are planning at the County Commissioner Association, and then I'll talk about what we're planning to do here at the COG. Okay,
it looks like I have a presentation. I don't have to share it, but looks like it's disabled. So I don't know if you can. Leslie, you are host now. So Leslie, I think you're going to need to transfer that over to Jason.
Okay, let's see.
Sonia, is that right? Or
yes, if you'll go to the participants.
Okay, I switched it. Yeah, I switched it to multiple participants can share.
Okay, perfect. Does that work for you now, Jason?
Yeah, that worked. Great.
Okay, yay me.
That was less complicated than ARPA guidelines.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope everybody can see that. Well, I think what you heard from Leslie is just like a really small window into how cumbersome the compliance and reporting requirements can be. But there is this reality that spending and awarding these federal funds necessitates this new level of expertise and really a higher administrative workload for counties, unfortunately. And this is especially true, I think, if you're not accustomed to working within the scope of federal uniform guidance. But just for a moment to back up out of kind of the technicalities of this thing, we have this moment in time where we have this convergence of need and opportunity. We've got millions of dollars coming into each county through the American Rescue Plan Act, local fiscal recovery funds. And in addition, counties also receive funds over an 18-year period, starting fairly soon, no later than the end of the fiscal year, starting to receive money through the national opioid settlement to help develop solutions to address the epidemic. So these are monies that provide just enormous opportunity to address challenges that are unique to your county and your region. And your county has control over these funds within, of course, the defined limits. And that's the real tricky part. So the funding means that there's a need internally for county staff support for just in various areas, tracking expenditures, monitoring any subrecipients of county grants or county subrecipients of your funds, filing reports to the U.S. Treasury, or in the opioid case, the Opioid Settlement Oversight Group, managing projects, managing project budgets, managing grants, engaging with the community, making sure that internally what's going on is being communicated. And then at the outset, skipping ahead to the outset, at the outset, hopefully have these conversations at the Board of Commissioners level about how to plan strategically about where your county wants to be in 5, 10, 20 years, and how the funding can help get you there. So we see a need there that we can help with. There convergence of two rivers here, but there's a third river, metaphorically, that's not shown here, and that's this current and future help in finance and administration that we see a need to help with. It's not an issue in every county. Some counties have no problem recruiting top-level talent when needed and recruiting young talent to groom. We want to try to provide that opportunity for every county in the state, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. At the association, we have a desire to help and also a charge to help. Helping counties is just in our nature. It's what we were created to do, and that's where our heart is. We were, putting plans and pieces in place to help counties with guidance on ARPA funds and opioid settlement funds, regardless. But then the state of North Carolina provided this opportunity for us to do something bigger by including money in the state budget for us to provide assistance. And that created NCACC with an opportunity to pursue some transformational change of our own. And these are the areas that we envision providing assistance to counties. Number one, strategic planning and collaborative conversations. I mentioned this, our NCACC outreach associates. This is a specialized team of professionals with county management or finance experience that will be available to facilitate discussions with county staff and boards of commissioners to set direction and goals for county services. These are discussions that can occur at the individual county level or at the regional level with the assistance of your council of governments, and can help county leaders envision a best possible path forward with ARPA or the opioid settlement funds. You heard from Neil Emery during introductions. Neil is a longtime county manager. He was with Harnett County when I started with the association back in 2004. He's now retired and serves as an outreach associate. We're working to hire more Neils to serve counties across the state. So the cloning thing that we were all trying to figure out, we really need more Neils. Number two there, federal compliance standards and eligible projects. NCACC staff with targeted knowledge of federal uniform guidance provisions will provide expertise and guidance to counties in multiple areas and help meet the requirements of the opioid settlement MOA as well. Some of you may know Lacey Payton on our staff. Leslie mentioned Lacey. Lacey's our policy research director, and she's our current ARPA expert. That's another level of support that we're working to build out. And then third there, it's project management, grant management, subrecipient monitoring and oversight, expenditure reporting, community outreach, and communications, those pieces I mentioned initially that are part of the heavy lift that goes along with receiving the money. Operating at the heart of our strategic member services division is a cohort of strategic project coordinators. What we're doing now is working to hire master's level graduates in the fields of public administration, finance, accounting, or even public health for positions within NCACC to help counties meet the requirements associated with ARPA or the opioid settlement funds. These strategic project coordinators are association employees. They're paid by us out of the money that the state is granting. And they'll be assigned to work within regions to serve multiple counties. And while they won't necessarily work full-time within an assigned county, they will be expected to spend time in county offices to meet and build relationships with county staff. This cohort, with the support of the NCACC team, will enjoy the benefit of sharing experiences and lessons through peer learning, professional development programs that the association develops, or that the association develops, along with, I hope, councils of governments as well. That's where this partnership really comes into play. You met our first two strategic project coordinators during the beginning. They both started just within the past week. Dillon Reeves received his Master of Public Administration from Appalachian State in December 2019. Don didn't tell you this, but he has a real passion for public service and worked as a firefighter and EMT for the city of Winston-Salem for almost 5 years. And then Andrea Setterby, he received his MPA from UNC Chapel Hill in December. He recently spent time working with City of Asheville as a graduate researcher, and then with City of Raleigh as a budget and management services intern, and has some experience working with ARPA funds through that internship. Our vision right now is to build out that cohort to a total of 24 or so recent graduates. So part of what we're trying to create is this professional training ground. We want to work with counties to provide training and professional mentoring for these recent graduates, who will then in turn provide project-related services on behalf of and under the oversight of the county. And it's really meant to be a win-win in that sense. It's a win for the county because you receive help with the heavy lifts in terms of tracking expenditures and reporting. And it's a win for the recent graduate who receives this meaningful professional experience and relationship building very early on in their career. So with that, I just have a couple of questions for you to consider after hearing what we're building. How can we help? Are there areas that we've identified, the areas that we have identified, are those needs on point for you? Because we want to hear about where the gaps are, where maybe we have services that are planned but are maybe not needed. And then second, can we share this vision of what we're trying to long-term accomplish, which is when needed, will you help mentor that recent MPA graduate, help them understand the people, the politics, the conflicts that they're not really experienced enough to know yet how to handle? And then when you feel like that individual is providing this level of service and new ideas that you find valuable, will you consider offering them a position with the county if one is open, or recommending that individual to another county for an open position? Because if this program works as it should, these strategic project coordinators are hired away by our member counties to become part of your internal pipeline. So that's what we're building at the association. Happy to answer questions about the services that we're anticipating being able to offer. As you learned, we have 2 strategic project coordinators right now. I'm excited about the potential that they bring. We've got a lot more building to do out of that cohort, and that's something that we'll be working on a lot over the next couple of months. And I'll just continue to have these conversations with folks that are coming up on, particularly with the May graduation cycle. Those who are coming out want to get into county government, want to get into local government, and we really want to provide them with that opportunity and build that bridge for them. So I'm happy to take questions now if anyone has them. And I'll say that we're building capacity. If you have a need and want to work with the association, please let me know. We can start at the board level, lead conversations, and then also bring in these coordinators to help in your finance or management offices. Okay. Well, appreciate the time. I will say that we'll follow up. No need to share the slideshow, but we do have a PDF one pager. It's called a one pager, but actually 2 pages because it's front to back. But we'll share that. David and his team can share that in a follow-up email.
Thank you, Jason, so much. And Leslie, thank y'all so much for everything. I think it's a great program that the County Association is working on with the succession planning and helping, because I know here at the COG, it's something we've really been talking about, and I know our counties are going to be in that same situation sometime to come as well. So I think it's a great opportunity for our counties to take advantage of services there through the association to help with those long-term needs that they've got. Here at the COG, we're excited to have the opportunity to partner with the association as we're providing ARPA services to our member governments. We've got Sonia Johnson, who's our clerk, who is going to be temporarily serving as a local government services coordinator. We're expanding some of her job duties. Myself and John, who are here to help meet our members' needs. We're also recruiting a second planner to help us expand what we're able to provide for our member governments. With ARPA services, we'll also be doing some work with you on resiliency as we're planning to go forward and making our region a more resilient community and helping with all those recovery impacts that we're still having from hurricanes Florence and Matthew, and moving the region forward. I will say, if you've got questions, if you've got need help with eligibility, I think you've got great resources from the County Association. The COGs are also here. If you need some of our staff to come over, spend a day or so with you every week to help process documents, help with documentation. We are starting to get some of those requests from members with reporting coverage, with uniform guidance information. I will tell you, I think we have a great expert in our planning director, Jean Klein, when it comes to uniform guidance, who can help answer those questions that you may have. You know, here at the COG, pretty much what we do is the administration of federal funds. So we're very familiar with those requirements for uniform guidance, and we want to help our members with those needs. So please feel free to reach out to us and let us know if there's any kind of needs that we can help provide or meet there in your county offices, your county governments. With that being said, I'll see if anybody has any questions for us. If not, you know, please reach out, let us know. We'll get the information about the strategic partnerships that the association is looking at when we receive that from Jason, as well as the PowerPoint. We'll get that over to all of the contacts we have in the county's managers' offices, finance offices, and with the county clerks. Once we get that, please let us know. Jason and Leslie, thank you so much for your time and great presentations today. We greatly appreciate it. So does anyone have any last minute questions? If not, we'll wish you well, and everybody stay safe with the weather it looks like we're going to be having later today.
Thank you, David. Thanks to you and your team.
Thank you, Jason. Thank
Thanks,
you, Leslie.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye-bye.